You have been moving forward without looking back. Not because you are fearless or because the past has nothing to teach you. Because looking back feels like going backward. Because the culture you are living in has made a virtue of forward motion and a liability of the backward glance. Because the people who most successfully occupy the present seem to be the ones who have left the past behind most completely, who carry the lightest possible load of what came before and move most efficiently toward what comes next. And you have noticed, quietly, perhaps without quite naming it, that the forward motion is missing something. That there is a specific quality of groundedness, of depth, of knowing who you are and where you come from that the relentless forward movement keeps outrunning. That the self that moves fastest is not always the self that moves most fully. That something important was left behind, and the leaving behind has produced a thinness that more forward movement will not cure. The Akan people of West Africa, principally from what is now Ghana and Ivory Coast, have an image for this. The Sankofa bird. It moves forward with its body pointed toward the future, head turned backward, carrying an egg in its beak. The egg is what it has retrieved from the past. The knowledge, the inheritance, the wisdom that was in danger of being left behind. And it carries this forward, not in order to go backward, in order to go forward more fully, more wisely, more completely as itself. Se volver e fina wosankofa a yenkyi. It is not wrong to go back for what you forgot. There is a specific form of forward motion that the modern world rewards, and that leaves the self thinner than it could be. The person who has moved quickly through life, who has not been held back by strong ties to place or tradition or family or history, is often celebrated as adaptive, mobile, free, and there is genuine value in this mobility. The person who is not imprisoned by their past, who can step in a new context without carrying the weight of every previous context, who can reinvent themselves as circumstances require. This person has a real advantage in a world that changes as fast as the modern world changes. But something is also lost in the rapid movement. The person who has cut themselves free from the roots has also cut themselves free from the nourishment the roots provide. The knowledge of where you come from, the stories that explain why you are the way you are, the practices and values that your people developed across generations of living with specific challenges in a specific place. The wisdom that was hard-won by the people who came before you, and that is yours by inheritance, if you go back for it. Sankofa says, the inheritance is not a burden. It is an egg, something that carries within it the potential for life. The question is whether you're willing to reach back and take it, to do the work of retrieval that rapid forward motion keeps deferring, and to carry it forward into the life you are building. The bird does not stop moving forward to go back. It moves forward with its head turned back, integrating the retrieved wisdom into the forward motion itself. This is the image that distinguishes Sankofa from nostalgia. Nostalgia retreats into the past. Sankofa retrieves from the past in order to enrich the present and the future. The direction of travel does not change. What changes is the fullness with which the traveler moves. The Akan philosophical tradition is carried not only in text, but in visual symbols. The Adinkra symbols, a system of visual language used in fabric, pottery, and architecture that encodes philosophical teachings in geometric form. Sankofa is one of the most widely recognized Adinkra symbols, a stylized bird with its body facing forward, head turned backward, feet planted firmly on the ground, carrying an egg. It also appears as a heart-shaped symbol, the retrieval of what was left behind as the most necessary act of the heart. The Akan people developed this tradition over many centuries in the forest regions of West Africa. Their philosophy, rooted in the concept of unyam, the supreme being, and organized around the values of community, ancestral wisdom, and the cyclical nature of time, is not a system of individual self-improvement. It is a philosophy of the person embedded in community across time. The individual is always already in relationship to the living community, to the ancestors who shaped it, and to the descendants who will inherit from it. The Akan concept of time is not linear in the Western sense. The past is not behind. It is present, available, relevant to the present moment. The ancestors are not gone. They're a living presence in the community, accessible through ritual, ceremony, and the deliberate practice of remembering. The wisdom they accumulated is not historical artifact. It is living resource, available to anyone willing to perform the retrieval. The scholar and Ghanaian cultural theorist Kwame Asani has written extensively on Sankofa as a philosophical and educational principle. For Asani, Sankofa is not simply a proverb about learning from history. It is a complete epistemological position, a claim about where genuine knowledge comes from and what it requires. Knowledge that ignores the accumulated wisdom of the ancestors, that treats the past as irrelevant to the present, that begins from scratch with each generation. This is impoverished knowledge. The fullest understanding available to a human being draws on the full depth of the tradition they have inherited, critically examined, and selectively retrieved, carried forward into the present as living resource. The philosophy and practice. What Sankofa actually demands and what it produces. The first demand is honest retrieval. Sankofa is not an invitation to idealize the past. The Akan tradition is not nostalgic. It does not assume that what was left behind by mistake, or that the past was simply better. The retrieval is selective and critical. What was left behind that was worth keeping? What wisdom did the rapid forward motion cause to be lost that the present genuinely needs? The retrieval requires discernment, the ability to distinguish between what was left behind because it no longer served and what was left behind because the movement was too fast to carry it. This discernment is the philosophical work. It requires both knowledge of the past, what was actually there, what the ancestors actually understood, an honest assessment of the present, what the present is missing that the past had. The person who can make this assessment is the person who can make the retrieval genuinely useful rather than merely sentimental. The second demand is integration. The bird carries the egg forward. The retrieved wisdom is not preserved in a museum. It is brought into the living present and allowed to do its work there. The ancestral knowledge is not kept separate from the contemporary engagement. It is integrated into how the person moves, how they make decisions, how they understand what they're doing and why. This integration is harder than the retrieval. The retrieved wisdom came from a different context, addressed different problems, was developed by people whose circumstances were not identical to yours. The work of integration is the work of understanding what the wisdom was actually pointing at, what enduring truth it was responding to, and finding the expression of that truth that is alive and useful in the present circumstances. The third demand is transmission. Sankofa is ultimately a communal practice. The wisdom retrieved is not retrieved for the individual alone. It is retrieved so that it can be carried forward into the community, so that the next generation inherits what this generation has taken the trouble to go back for. The person who retrieves the wisdom and keeps it private has completed only part of the Sankofa practice. The completion is in the offering, making what was retrieved available to those who come next. Now the bridge. Because Sankofa belongs to the Akan people of West Africa, to a specific tradition, a specific history, a specific relationship between a people and their ancestors that is not yours to claim as an outsider. But the philosophical principle translates across every life. Because every person has something that was left behind in the forward motion. Every person has an inheritance that the rapid movement has partially outrun. Every person is carrying forward, whether they know it or not, the accumulated wisdom and wounds and unfinished business of the people who preceded them. And the question is whether they will carry it consciously, having done the work of retrieval and integration, or unconsciously as unexamined weight. What was left behind in your own forward motion? The stories your grandparents never told you because they died before you thought to ask. The practice or skill or way of life that your family gave up somewhere in the trajectory from there to here. The values or knowledge or way of seeing the world that the people who came before you developed at great cost and that the forward motion has caused to thin in your hands. The specific, available, genuinely belonging to you inheritance that is waiting for you to go back for it. Sankofa does not ask you to stop moving forward. It asks you to turn your head. Here is what Sankofa asks of you, practically, today. First, identify what was left behind. The specific inheritance that the forward motion has outrun. Not what you wish had been different. What is actually there in the family history, the cultural tradition, the practices and stories and values that the people who came before you developed, that you have not yet retrieved. One thing, the story not yet heard, the skill not yet learned, the practice not yet taken up, the question not yet asked of the person who is still alive to answer it. Name it, not in order to feel guilt about the leaving behind, in order to make the retrieval possible. The Sankofa principle does not condemn the forward motion. It points to what can be brought into it that is currently missing. Second, go back for it, not metaphorically. The actual call made, the actual archive visited, the actual question asked. The Sankofa retrieval is a concrete act, the deliberate, specific, sometimes uncomfortable work of going back to something that the forward motion has moved away from and bringing it forward. One concrete act of retrieval today or this week. The conversation with the elder, the document read, the practice attempted, the story sought, the specific, available, genuinely retrievable piece of the inheritance that has been waiting for the retrieval. Third, examine honestly. The Akan tradition does not ask for uncritical acceptance of what the ancestors left. It asks for the discerning examination that distinguishes wisdom from error, enduring truth from historically specific circumstance. The retrieved inheritance must be examined. What was this responding to? What was the enduring principle it was expressing? Does that principle still apply? In what form is it still alive and useful? This examination is what prevents Sankofa from collapsing into nostalgia. The bird does not carry everything back from the past. It carries the egg, the essence, the living potential, the discernment that knows the difference between the shell and what it contains. Fourth, pass it forward. Tell the story to someone younger. Teach the practice to someone who does not know it. Make the retrieved wisdom available to the people who come next, not as an obligation imposed, but as the gift that was given to you when someone before you took the trouble to preserve what was worth preserving. This is the completion of the Sankofa practice. The wisdom retrieved and integrated and now transmitted. The egg carried forward and offered to the next hands. The chain of inheritance maintained, not by remaining in the past, but by doing the work of retrieval that makes the future richer than the forward motion alone could have made it. I want to close with the image itself. The Sankofa bird, body facing forward, head turned back, feet on the ground, egg in the beak. It is not a bird in two minds about its direction. Its direction is forward. The body makes this unambiguous. What the turned head adds is the depth, the awareness of where the forward motion is coming from, what it has passed through, what it has the responsibility to carry. The feet on the ground are the presence in the now, neither lost in the past nor abstracted into the future. The egg is the specific, living, retrievable wisdom that the forward motion was in danger of leaving behind. The image is complete. Nothing in it is in conflict. The forward motion and the backward glance are not opposing impulses held in tension. They are the same bird, moving in one direction, with the full richness of where it has been available to inform where it is going. This is what wisdom looks like in the Akan understanding. Not the accumulation of new information, the integration of what was inherited with what is being built. The meeting of the past and the present in the specific, available, always possible act of retrieval. The turning of the head, the finding of the egg, the carrying forward of what was left behind. Se volver é fina wosankofa a yenkyi. It is not wrong to go back for what you forgot. Go back. Find it. Carry it forward. That is the whole practice. And it is available right now in a specific, unrepeatable, genuinely retrievable inheritance that is yours. Here is the question Sankofa leaves us with today. What was left behind in your forward motion that is worth going back for? One thing, specific, retrievable, genuinely yours by inheritance. And what would it mean to carry it forward, not as the weight of the past, but as the egg, the living potential, the wisdom that the forward motion needs in order to be as full as it could be? Leave that in the comments, because naming what you're going back for and committing to the retrieval is the beginning of the Sankofa practice. The bird turning its head, the egg found, the forward motion finally complete. I'll see you in the next one.